Welcome to the first episode of Dark Crime Story, where we get you up to date on some of the most terrifying stories currently happening in the world this week, looking into an extremely twisted story of a girl so obsessed with true crime that she just had to try it out herself. Then we're headed over to Ohio to hear about a case that really went overboard, as it had 8 family members found murdered in a single day in 4 different homes. Get rid of a scary mystery. Twisted News number 1, the curiosity killing of a tutor. 23-year-old Jung Yu Jong from the city of Busan in North Korea. Much like you guys and myself love true crime. She watched documentaries and read books about all the most twisted and sinister killers from around the world. She, of course, went down many rabbit holes on YouTube about the subject, while many people do this from time to time. Of course, Jung was a bit different. Her fixation was not merely a passive interest. No, she liked true crime in a way that was an active, dangerous curiosity, and she was fixated on the idea of trying out a murder. So much so that it occupied her mind day and night, till finally she decided to take action, since she just needed to know what it was like. Jung didn't want to hurt anyone she knew personally, so she decided to find a way to have her victim come to her by using an online tutoring app that was meant for education and growth. This would now be a tool used for something much darker. For months, Jung scoured through profiles, contacting over 50 potential targets. But she needed to find the perfect match. Her criteria was specific. She preferred women so she would not be overpowered, and she needed to know if they taught from home. It was meticulous work until finally in May of 2023 she found her, and posing as a concerned mother seeking English lessons for her high schooler, Jung contacted a 26-year-old English language teacher. The teacher, whose identity remained shielded under South Korean law, had no idea of the danger that was about to enter her life. On the day the murder, Jung arrived at the tutor's home, disguised in a schoolgirl's uniform purchased online. The teacher only wanted to help someone in a kind-hearted way, welcomed her. In it was pretty much immediate after that when Jung unleashed her brutal attack, in which she stabbed the teacher over 100 times in a frenzy that continued even after the victim had passed away. But the Rhoden, and there Jung dismembered the body coldly, transporting some of the remains in a blood-soaked suitcase to a remote park near a river north of Busan. There was a taxi driver, unsettled by the gruesome contents of the suitcase, dripping in blood that tipped off the police. Jung's arrest revealed a chilling backstory. Her online browsing history was a roadmap to murder people, with searches on how to kill and how to dispose of a body. The police would later reveal that Jung had also scored alarmingly high on a psychopath test. Yet despite her meticulous planning and knowledge of all things true crime, Jung was careless in other ways, made no effort to avoid CCTV cameras, which captured her entering and leaving the tutor's home multiple times, and of course it was sloppy with how she disposed of the remains. The court sentence reflected the gravity of the crime. Jung's plea for leniency based on claims of hallucinations and mental disorders was rejected. The crime was too calculated and too cold-blooded. Her shifting statements to the police only further eroded any credibility to her defense. In the end, the Busan District Court's judge condemned the act for its impact on society, highlighting the fear and distrust had spread among the community. The crime was a harrowing reminder that evil can strike randomly without reason, and for that she received a life sentence. Though South Korea hasn't carried out an execution since 1997, prosecutors' request for the death penalty, in this case, underscores the severity of Jung's actions. It was a crime born from a twisted curiosity, a fascination with the Maub that turned deadly. Number 2, the Pecan Village tragedy. In Pike County, Ohio, lies the village of Pecan, a community knit tightly by familiar faces and shared histories. But on a regular morning, back in April of 2016, an unspeakable horror unfolded, and it left 8 family members of the road and family dead in 4 different locations. Pecan with it. 8 and 20 households had always up until this point been a canvas of normal rural life until that day of April 22nd, when the entire street of Hill Road basically became a crime scene. The first inklings that something bad had happened hit when Bobby Jo Manley, who was 40-year-old Chris Rhoden Sr., his sister-in-law, arrived at his property for her routine morning chore of feeding the dogs and chickens. But the sight that greeted her inside the man's trailer was beyond comprehension. Chris and his cousin, 38-year-old Gary Rhoden, lay lifeless, bearing the marks of an intense and violent assault. 7:49 a.m. Then made a frantic call to 911, her voice trembling with a grim revelation. Very close by was another trailer, this one belonging to Chris Sr., son 20-year-old Frankie Wren, who lived with his fiancée Hannah. Gilly Bobby Joe knocked on their door. That's when Frankie's 3-year-old son, the sole witness, opened it and, covered in blood, could only articulate the horror in his innocent words that his dad was playing zombie. Both Frankie and Hannah have been shot nearby in another house. Dana Wren, Chris Sr.'s ex-wife, and 2 of their children, 16-year-old Chris Jaw and 19-year-old Hannah May, were also found killed, each of them having been shot as well. By the early afternoon in the 4th location, Kenneth Rhoden, Chris Sr.'s brother, was discovered with a fatal wound through his eye, his body surrounded by a curious scattering of dollar bills. It was in total a scene of utter chaos and horror. The community was shook, of course, paralyzed with fear and disbelief at what had occurred, and it was a rampage that the local authorities were overwhelmed by because of the sheer magnitude of the crime. They called in the State Bureau of Criminal Investigations to assist, and right away they knew this was not going to be an easy one to crack. As they dug in, this case became a labyrinth that led down many different paths with no witnesses, no fingerprints, and no DNA. The question then remained, how could such a massacre unfold in Pecan? And why, with all 8 victims being shot in the head, some multiple times with several different weapons? This was no random attack, but a coordinated effort by several perpetrators working together to snuff out the rodents. The killers, though they left no DNA, had left behind distinct shoe prints marked in blood. There were at least 2 sets, so they knew they had at least 2 people involved. The shoe prints were clear enough that they could be traced back to being sold at a local Walmart, which, though might not seem all that significant, became a crucial lead. A decent-sized weed growing operation out one of the sheds discovered by detectives made them think at first that this could have been a drug-rated crime, but as they looked further they found out that these murders were something much more personal. Hannah, who was Frankie's fiancée, had a 2-year-old daughter from a previous relationship with a man named Jake Wagner, and it had been with Jake for 6 years and was madly in love with them. She even lived with the Wagers for some time before she and Jake broke up. Jake lived with his older brother and their parents, and just a year after the murders, they all packed everything up and moved to Alaska. And meanwhile, that pair of shoes from Walmart, well, it was back to having been bought by someone in the Wagner family. Authorities searched through everyone's social media and text records, and that's when they found that it seemed like Jake and Hannah were having a bit of a custody battle over Sophia. So now there was a motive. In 2018, the Wagners then moved back to Ohio, at which point Their every move and calls were traced by police. One of those wiretaps, Mother Angela was heard telling her sons, "We're running on borrowed time," and Jake responded with, "Mom, you're being paranoid." The arrest of the Wagner family in November of 2018 was a shock to those who knew them. The charges were heinous, aggravated murder of the prosecutors seeking the death penalty. The family, once part of the community's fabric, stood accused of tearing it apart now. Jake Wagner's guilty plea in April of 2021, where he confessed to killing 5 of the victims, revealed the depths of the betrayal and the darkness of the plot. His testimony against his family members in order to not receive the death penalty underscored the tragic unraveling of 2 families intertwined in a fatal dance of custody and control. Jake received a life sentence without the possibility of parole. His brother George received 8 life sentences. Mother Angela got a 30-year sentence for her role in helping cover all up, and Father Billy is awaiting his trial for murder, which will soon start in May of 2024, and likely he too will spend the rest of his life in jail. So there were 2 of the most twisted and strange stories that we have for you guys today. If you enjoyed it, go check out some of our other videos. Please do like and subscribe so you don't miss out on all the videos we're putting out each and every week. Y'all stay safe out there. I'll see you soon.